Welcome everyone. In this video I'm going to go over the 4 challenges from the selection tutorial. So the first challenge is to check a user input and say sorry, this film is not for you if the user input is less than 18. So let's do a console.writeLine and ask please enter your age. So because we're putting a number in, we're going to go int user input. We're going to use an integer. And because it's an integer, the console.readline needs to be surrounded by the int.parse. Next, we're going to put the user input in a selection statement. Now, luckily, 2002 version of Visual Studio does a lot of predicting for me. However, that's not quite what I wanted. I wanted to say less than 18. So we're going to check the user input and check is it less than 18. If that statement is true, we want it to say console.writeLine. What was the message again? Let's double check. Sorry, this film is not for you. And there we go. So we'll need to do a console.read key just to make sure the program doesn't close down at the end. It's always a good idea to test your program just in case you made a mistake and you can't quite see if you've made a mistake. So for example, I may have put a greater than instead of a less than. So there we go, we can just test. So I'd like to test 4 different values. So one where it definitely is going to be true. So let's say 10, perfect. One where the statement is going to be false. So let's say 20, so that's above 18. And it's always a good idea to check the boundaries of the input. So the 2 boundaries are 18 and 17. So 18 shouldn't give me an output, and that's what happens. And 17 does give me the output, and that's what happens. Perfect. So challenge 2 was to validate an input, make sure they put in a number between 1 and 10 and say sorry, out of range if they do not. So this one, what we're going to have to do is we'll change this to please enter a number, not your number, between 1 and 10. We'll keep the user input, and what we can do is we'll say less than 0. So if it's less than 0, it's going to say out of range, and we're going to do another selection statement that's greater than 10. Not less than 10, greater than 10. And if it's greater than 10, less than 0, and in fact, it'll have to be less than 1, not less than 0, otherwise it's going to allow, otherwise it'll allow 0. Greater than 10? Yeah, I think that should work. Yeah, so let's test, only one way to find out. So let's put in a number in between 1 and 10, so let's say 5, that works. Let's say 11, and that's out of range, and we'll say 0, and that's out of range too. Perfect. Challenge 3 was write a program that prompts the user to enter a number between 1 and 7, and then using a series of else-if statements, the corresponding day will be shown. So 1 will put Monday, 2 will put Tuesday, and so on. So we'll keep the user input. So we'll just say please enter a number. Let's get rid of this statement and say if the user input, will use equals. Remember, when you're doing a comparison, we'll need to use a double equals, and we'll say equals 1. So that would be Monday. Now, as programmers, we should be copy pasting as much as possible. So we don't need to write the entire statement. So we're going to say 2 is Tuesday, and we've already got the else if, so I'm going to do Monday, Tuesday, this will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Quickly go through 5, 6, and 7, and do the days of week. Thursday, Friday. If you haven't figured out by now, I haven't actually scripted these videos. The reason is I want to go through my thought process as I'm coding it. If I script it, then you won't actually see what my thought process is when I'm creating programs. Let's double check if this works. And what I mean is, if you just see me write the code, you won't see like the steps of how I solve it, because coding isn't just memorizing a load of code, it's problem solving. So 4 is Thursday, that works for me. Let's do one more test. As 7 do Sunday. Perfect. So final one is a little bit trickier. It's a random number game. So 3 if statements. The random number, if the user guesses higher, so it's going to choose a random number between 1 and 10. The user is going to guess that number. It should say higher, lower, or you win. Now to do this, I've kind of cheated a little bit, and I've skipped ahead a few lessons, and I've given you some extra code to see if you can create a random number. So let's use this code to create a random number. We're going to keep this if statement. We're going to keep this user input, but just below it, we're going to use that. If I can remember how to actually create a random number, it is random RND equals new random, and luckily 2022 actually fills it in for me. So this is going to create a random number. A future video, I'm going to create an entire video on how to do random numbers, so don't worry if you don't quite understand how this works. So we're going to say int random number is equal to rnd.next. Let's go from 1 to 10. So this is going to contain the value of a number between 1 and 10. So what we're going to have to do is check the user input with that random number. So if it equals the random number, then we're going to say you win, like that. So I'm just going to put this on my other screen so I can see it easier. If the random number is greater than the user input, so I'm going to do it this way. So we're going to say random number is greater than the user input. We're going to say you need to guess higher. If the guess number is lower, then we need to say lower. So three selection statements should do this. I'm going to do these as else if. That makes it a little bit more not convenient. What's the word? It makes it quicker to actually run the code if you do that way. Efficient, that was the word I was looking for. So to test this out, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write the random number out to the screen, so we're not having to guess what the random number is. Once I've finished my game, I can take this out. So this is just to test. So we're going to delete later. There we go. So when I run this, oh, I should probably write that before. So just realized it's going to ask me to enter the number before. So we'll put the random number, we'll generate the random number and then ask the number. So there you go. So the number is 2. So if I put 3, for example, it should tell me lower. Oh, higher, that's not quite what I wanted. So I need to do it the other way around, don't I? Someone's probably already spotted that and is screaming at me through the screen right now. So 9 higher. What have I done wrong? Oh, of course. I've put higher in both of them, haven't I? So wait, I just need to say lower. There you go, you're seeing some live debugging. So 9 should say lower. There we go. I thought it was going crazy for a second. So 4, 5, lower. So let's test if we get it correct. 5, that says you win. Now normally this game would have a loop to allow you to guess a certain number of times, but for this one I haven't taught you how to use loops yet, so don't worry about that. 3 goes higher. Perfect. And there we go. So if you found that useful, if you enjoyed that video, please give it a like and remember to subscribe to see my next tutorial.